In part 1, we started and finished most of the engine work on the 1/8 scale Cobra from Agora models. In this episode, we're going to move on to the chassis and then later on start to put the engine on the chassis as well, before we probably move on to the interior in an upcoming episode. So the chassis itself is built up out of multiple components and is a sort of ladder frame style tube chassis. And the bottom half is assembled first, and then you pretty much do the same thing on the top half to finish it off and make them actually into some round bars. On the front there is a sort of cross member where some of the suspension components mount to, and some of these plastic parts need to be put on as well. The assembly straight out of the box just says no glue, and I decided to add a little bit of glue just to help them stick in place a bit better, because the press fit was kind of loose and I wasn't really sure if they were going to stay there permanently, so a little bit of super glue helped that out. Both the top and bottom half have now been finished, so these could be mated up together to finalize this frame and make the tubes round on both ends and finish it off in the center with a couple more pieces. There are also a couple of flat pieces. These are just painted silver parts with a couple of the electronics in there, and also some provisions for future parts to be mounted to it. This is just to finish it off from the underside and also for the interior to go on top of, and with those installed the engine could be put in place as well. The differential and also axles needs to be assembled too. This was made out of multiple parts, simply just stuck in place, and then also with a couple of screws to hold them tightly, and then some more pieces added in there. Some were screwed together, others needed a small metal rod to be press fit in to keep them in place. Same goes for the hubs and the discs to be put on there. These are not glued or screwed together. The caliper, however, is, but this means that the actual disc itself can still turn and rotate once the wheel is mounted to it. After putting the rear differential in place and connecting it with the drive shaft to the actual transmission, it was time to finish up the framing around it and also start mounting all of the other parts to start mounting the suspension to it later. So even though the dampers are not actually functional, so to speak, the springs themselves are, which makes it really cool just to see the entire assembly move up and down and actually function and articulate. After completing the rear, we can move on to the front and do a similar installation, of course, but then with the both front wheels having the function to also steer left and right. So it's a bit different, but the main components are very similar and go together in a similar fashion too. One half completed, time to move on to the other side and do the same thing in a mirror image. So there will be some more components added to this, I believe, for the steering to actually function and connect up with the steering wheel on the interior side of things, but for now we just need to put the inner fender liners on, and then one last part on the chassis to add some shielding underneath, and that is it for this one. On the next one I will be moving on to the interior and showing how that all goes together.